Hi, hello, and good morning. My name is Adam, and I make knives. Today is October 29th, and in just 28 days, I'll be exhibiting at the One of a Kind show in Toronto. This is an exhibition that regularly welcomes 200,000 visitors every year, making it the biggest and best craft exhibition of its kind in North America. Now, this is my first time attending, but every year exhibitors are invited to create a one-of-a-kind piece in their medium that reflects the annual theme of the show. And this year is all about the nostalgic charm of candy canes. Now, as a knife maker, there are two things that come to mind when I think about candy canes: twists and colors. In addition to the production knives that I'm bringing to this show that I'll be selling at my booth, which is C33, if you're there and want to come say hi, I'll also be crafting 5 ultra-premium, one-of-a-kind branded chef's knives for both the candy cane competition and a special capsule edition to celebrate the show's 50th anniversary. Everyone's candy cane entries will be placed front and center at the main entrance, and there will be a panel of judges selecting the top 3, and there will also be a People's Choice Award that visitors can vote on. So I'm going to make some fancy knives. I'll be making my model, the Tim, which is a 7.5-inch Western chef's knife. And I placed a custom order with Baker Forge for some Tiger Twist Damascus steel. I was originally just going to do one knife, but I kind of want to win, so I'm going to make 5. Now, to complement this Tiger Twist Damascus for my candy cane competition, we need some color. So I'm adding white G10 liners for just a little touch of a sugary sweet contrast, and some very special, very unique, very vibrantly colored handles. One in a red-orange, one in a yellow, one in a green, one in a blue, and my personal favorite, one in a purple. Now, they're not here yet. They're on the way from Europe, so I'll wait till they land before I show that reveal. Over the next few weeks, I'll be taking you behind the scenes as I craft these one-of-a-kind blades and hopefully take home that first-place prize. Once they're complete, I'll be auctioning them off at the show, so these will all be finding new homes, but more on that later. Let's get to work. The first step is to trace out the profile onto the billets and rough cut them with an angle grinder. This doesn't need to be super accurate. Once I have it rough cut, I'll come back in with Dykem Blue and a carbide scribe to get it super dialed in. This just saves me from having to grind away all this excess material. I try to do this grinding outside as often as I can to keep the dust down in the shop. I normally use cheap Amazon cutoff discs, but I had a guy from Walter reach out to say if you want to give these a try, I can swing by and drop them off. So these are ceramic grain. We'll see how they do. This Zipex ceramic disc actually held up really well. With all these cuts, it's about 5 mil of wear and noticeably less dust. I would have gone through at least one of these to do all of this. I normally just chuck my stainless cutoffs, and I don't do any forging. I'm a stock removal knife maker, but because this is Damascus, I'll hang on to this for a rainy day. Just gonna knock the burrs off quickly with an old belt. Next, I use Dykem layout fluid, and then I trace my profile with a carbide scribe to make sure that this whole batch is nice and consistent. A little manual intervention to assist with the drying process. And now I grind out the profiles to the scribe line. The steel is so sparky that it melted a hole through my intake funnel. So I switched to a water bucket for now, but there's the profile. Just have to switch to a small wheel to get that internal radius, clean up the edges, and drill some holes.
What a mess.
So there's the choil with a nice radius, and the last step before sending these out to heat treat is to drill the holes for the handle pins, because you can't drill after this has been hardened. Here I'm going to find a straight line in the middle of the handle. Scribe that line. I'm going to mark out even spacing for the pins and then punch it before I drill. I'll be using 1/8 stainless pins for all of these, so I've got number 30 drill bits, which are just a couple thousandths bigger, so this fits right in. I've got the pin holes drilled and countersunk, and now I'm going to do the epoxy bridge holes. And these are all set to get heat treated. Exciting times. Blades are back from heat treat. They're sitting at 62 Rockwell with liquid nitrogen cryo, so very hard and very tough steel. And you can get a little sneak peek at that Tiger Twist Damascus. And this is my $2,000 box of 5 knife handles that are going to go on these blades. So I'm using a material that I have never used before, and I am very excited to finally look at these in person. Oh, careful, careful, careful. Oh my God. Are you kidding me? So without further ado, what we have for handle materials to complement this Tiger Twist Damascus for my candy cane competition knives are stabilized, dyed, woolly, mammoth molars. Words cannot express what these look like in person. I'm speechless. They are stunning. They're mesmerizing. They're perfect. I am so nervous that I might ruin these, but I am very excited for if I don't. Okay, let's take a closer look at these. If you don't know what you're looking at here, these are genuine fossils. They are actual pieces of real woolly mammoth molars. Now, woolly mammoths existed between 10 and 300,000 years ago. I got a rough estimate on these between 10 and 40,000 years old. I don't know how accurate that is, but these are real woolly mammoth molars. And what you're seeing here with these lines are the 3 layers of an actual tooth. You have the enamel, the dentine, and the cementum. And just like the stabilized woods that I use for my handles, these are all infused with resin under a vacuum to give it the color and also make it more durable. And with that stabilization process, you get the most incredible depth. Now, I'm pretty sure the white layers are the enamel, which is an incredibly tough material, and apparently it just shreds anything that you try to cut it with. So I picked up a $50 blade designed for cutting glass. It's a continuous rim of diamond abrasive. I'm going to have to pick up a wet tile cutting saw as well to put this in, so I can rip these in half, flatten them out, get on the white G10 liners, and then hopefully drill it for the pins. That gives you an idea of what these are going to look like. I really can't tell which one is my favorite. Purple is my favorite color, so I obviously gravitate towards this one. But this is the original one that I found. I was just going to do this one. But I also love the browns and the greens and the blues and this yellow. And the green block is kind of two-toned. This is very green on this side with a lot of depth. This is very reptilian. And on the other side, you get yellows and browns. And the blue is very uniform, but it's so vibrant. This is very candy cane-esque. Anyways, let's grind some bevels. These blades have a little bit of warping, which is somewhat common with oil quenching, especially with Damascus. So I'm going to use my carbide ball peen to straighten these out a little bit before I scribe my center line and start on this bevel. Here I'm grinding in my rough bevels with my 36 grit, and I'm starting to do my distal taper towards the tip so it gets thinner as you go down the spine. And the reason I do that distal taper is to give this blade a more dynamic cutting experience. There's a lot more meat behind the heel so that you can do a lot of aggressive push cutting, and there's less behind the tip so you can do a lot of fine slicing and dicing without having wedging or food stick. So I remove the bulk of the material with my 36 grit. I'll jump up soon to my 60 to smooth things out and start to bring my edge thickness down, and then I'll jump to a 120 to bring that close to its final thickness before I polish it off on a 220 and then move to hand sanding. Busy day today. Today is Tuesday, November 18th, and I move into the One of a Kind show next Wednesday, a week tomorrow. So lots to do. The shop is a mess, I'm a mess, but priority one today is getting the handles ripped in half and attaching the white G10 liners. The bevels are pretty much finished, a little bit more work to do, but I'll just polish these off before I send them out to my man Todd Bolts to get these laser engraved with the One of a Kind logo. And in the meantime, I have a 7-inch continuous diamond rim glass cutting blade and a brand spanking new wet towel cutting saw to put it in. Let's get this together and pray to the mammoth gods that it works. I think this is the tub. Ta-da! Let's do a test cut. I knew this faucet was a good idea. Hold on to your hats.
It's loud, but it works.
I'm super pumped to have this saw in the shop now for a couple different reasons. I bought it to cut the mammoth molar, but I'll be able to use it to cut a lot of other things like my G10. So not only the liners, but also other scales. And this should make light work of it. So normally I'd set up my whole table outside and use my angle grinder. Makes a mess, causes a bunch of dust, and the hassle of having to do that every time, especially as winter's coming. I'm not looking forward to that. So this thing should treat me well. Let's try that G10 liner.
Well, that was easy.
So that was a super easy, nice clean cut. And the benefit of this as well is it's called the kerf. The width of the blade is like 1.5 millimeters compared to the ones that I usually use on the angle grinder that are never straight. So I'll save a lot of material just with these accurate cuts and the smaller blade.
Look at this in real time.
The water really helps with the dust. You can see what landed in the tray, but it still does generate some, so I skaboodled my shop back to the end there, and that got the rest. I got all these cuts done in a matter of about 4 minutes. Nice, clean, accurate cuts with very little mess and very little setup. Great purchase. But But now it's time for the meat and potatoes, and I am nervous. And honestly, one of the hardest things to decide is which one I'm going to do first. The red was my original idea, and purple's my favorite color, and I really like the green, and the yellow is super unique. I think we're going blue. I'll use the guide, of course, but I've still scribed a rough center line with my calipers. Wish me luck. I'm actually a touch concerned because this might actually be a pinch point with that spinning blade. I really don't want to freehand this though. Fuck it. I did feel it start to pull closer to the end, so I turned it around and got it from the other side. But that went pretty well. Nice. These definitely aren't perfect, but after 3 blocks, I think I'm already getting better with my technique. I am using that guide, and I'm finding that a slow rocking motion as I'm pushing forwards seems to help, going about 1/8 of an inch and then backing off slightly and continuing to do that. So it takes longer, but it's a cleaner cut. Also, with how narrow these blocks are, there's the tiniest amount of play, so I've made sure to flush out this face on the grinder, and I'm using a G10 sheet on the bottom to really help keep that secure. We have a casualty, unfortunately, but I think, especially with the G10 liner, I should be able to glue this back together, but that's really unfortunate. I wonder if getting the glass blade instead of the ceramic blade makes a difference. I'm going to throw on the blade that came with the saw and see if this makes a difference for the last red one. Definitely a more aggressive blade, way chippier, but it cut way faster. Again, no solutions, only trade-offs. Okay, we've got all 5 blocks ripped into scales, and it's definitely not perfect, but it's also not awful. This isn't anything I can't fix on the grinder and with my surface plate before I put on the G10. And I did have the purple one that cracked, but I have it in clamps right now with some super glue, and you can kind of barely tell where that crack is. So I think this will be just fine, especially with the G10 on the back face and the pins going through it. Let's get these flat. And here are the flattened faces using a 36 grit belt. It's really slow going. This is super tough material, and I'm not sure how it responds to heat, but I think this is good enough to get the G10 liners on. These 4 are all super flat. I have no light gap between them. So I'm going to scuff up the white G10 and glue these together. And here they are with the G10 liners attached, looking pretty good. And my tangs for these blades are way smaller than the size of the scales the way they are now. So after I trim these up and get them all nice and square, I'll probably do an angled cut on the tile saw so I don't have to grind all this away. That would take 6 years. But I have all the bevels done, all my edges are sub 5/1000ths, and everything is nice and rounded. Just have to give this a polish before I send these off to my man Todd Bolts for some laser engraving. So here's my rough hand-sanded finish. And here's what it looks like after going up the grits and giving it a quick polish. Time to do this 9 more times. It's always a good idea when you're hand sanding to wet sand, especially with your higher grits. This really helps keep the sandpaper from bogging down with all that sanding dust and lets you cut for a lot longer. Now, I used to use WD-40 and Windex for the longest time. Water's a bad idea, especially with high carbon steel because it will just rust. But I've actually settled on using Tap Magic. So this stuff here, I have it in a squeeze bottle here just so I can control how much I add. You don't need very much, a couple drops per side. This lasts forever. But this is by far the best stuff I've used so far for wet sanding. If you can see here, I'm sanding at a different angle, and I do that every time I change a grit to make sure that I remove all of the scratches from the previous grit. And that change doesn't have to be a lot. Normally I go parallel with the blade and then maybe 10 or 20 degrees, just enough to see the difference. So surprisingly, I was just thinking a thought, and I'm not confident I'll be able to drill clean pinholes because I've only got high-speed drill bits, and this is really tough material. I had a difficult time with a diamond blade. So I did a test drill, and the bit really wandered through here, which is a good call. I'm glad I did that. I don't think I'm going to do full pinholes. I'm going to throw an audible and do hidden pins, and I think that might actually be better. So it'll just be just the clean mammoth molar on the outside with pins on the inside to keep it really secure. And the purple lives on. I am pumped. Next, I'm going to use the tile saw to trim off the excess molar. That's so I don't have to grind it all away, and I might be able to use those small pieces for something else. So this is pretty cool, and this times 10 is what I'm not turning into dust. I've got all my scales flattened to uniform thicknesses, and my blades are back from being laser engraved. And because I'm doing hidden pins, I'm going to have to figure out how to make sure that these align properly, because if they're offset, that'll be noticeable. I want to avoid that. I think what I'll do is drill 3 pins and then use double-sided tape to align the block, flip it over, and drill from the other side. I've got my 3 pinholes aligned on the right scale, and I've drilled just through the G10, which is 1 millimeter thick, and just into the mammoth scale underneath. So I'll make my pin the thickness of the tang plus 2 millimeters, so they sit beautifully in these slots. And I've actually matched the epoxy bridge holes as well, so those will create some epoxy pins. I've got double-sided tape on the side I just drilled, and double-sided tape on the other side, so I'll align this, stick it down, flip it over, remove this one, and drill the same. And there we have it. And with the smallest pin I've ever made, that pin sticks out 1 millimeter, just enough to grab this G10. And rinse and repeat. And I'll use that to reference where I want the front face of the handle scales. When I have this one done and ground out, then I'll flip it over and do this side. So here we have the index scales, front faces match, the patterns match. Gonna do some rough profiling to get this closer to the metal, and these are almost ready to etch and glue up. I've got the front faces tapered. I've just got to take these up a few grits and then give them a polish, and these handles are ready to rock. All 5 handles are ready for glue up, and the next step is to polish up these blades and get them etched. Words can't describe how nervous and excited I am to etch these. They're going to be so sick. And I ground them so thin. These aren't sharpened yet. They're just super thin, and they're already slicing through paper. Oh. I want to protect the laser engravings before I etch, so I'm adding nail polish to those before I give this its final polish, before it goes in the dip juice. I ended up bailing on the nail polish because as I was doing my final polish of the blade to prepare it for etching, I took some of it out, and I really don't want it being uneven, so I'm just going to roll the dice the way it is. But
it's time!
Giving it a good clean with dish soap first. Let's see. Let's take a look. Oh my God. Yes. Yes. Here it is after 3 cycles in ferric, and this looks so much better than I could have ever imagined. I'm so excited. And what you're seeing with the twist pattern, there are 3 different metals in here, and 15N20 has a high nickel content, and I want that silver to really pop. So I'm going to sand this lightly with 3000 grit sandpaper, and then afterwards put it in coffee to darken up the others. This is out of the ferric and with a light 3000 grit sand. 2 hours in the instant coffee turned this a bit blue. It almost forced a patina. I think I prefer it just out of the ferric. Yeah, that's the play. I'm going to degrease this one more time, apply a coat of gator skin. It's a food-safe ceramic coating. Let that dry and then get this into glue up. I've got Mr. Red and Mr. Yellow out of glue up, ready to start shaping the handles. And Mr. Green, Mr. Blue, and Mr. Purple ready for glue up. So I'll get these set before I start working on these. And there we go. Let's get to work. I can see the finish line, but this is still super nerve-wracking because this can still very easily chip or even fracture. I've got a fresh 60 grit ceramic belt, and I'm going to do as much work as I can on my contact wheels because it removes more material and it generates less heat. I've only sanded to 220 here, but this is 95% shaped. Just have to go up a bunch of grits. And I've actually given this side a quick buff. A, because I'm impatient, and 2, because it helps you see all the scratches that you missed. Oh, baby. The first one is done. And it is incredible. I've been working for pretty much 55 days straight getting ready for this show. And to see this completed, I tell you, this is the greatest thing I've ever made. So here's a closer look. We've got that beautiful Baker Forge Tiger Twist Damascus at 62 Rockwell, a nice zero grind, the laser engraved one-of-a-kind logo, mine on the back, and a full tang, hidden pin, high polish, mammoth tooth handle with white G10 liners. It's a thing of beauty. I've got 4 more handles to do. I've also got to build my custom magnetic display stand for these 5 competition pieces, so we'll check back in when all of this is finished. Ladies and gentlemen, they are all done. Let me show you what they're going to look like on the display. I know my GoPro quality isn't the greatest, so I'll post some high-resolution pictures, but there we have it. So this whole display, this set of 5 knives, is my submission for the candy cane competition at the one-of-a-kind show, and I'm also individually auctioning off each knife during the show, so keep an eye on my website for details if you're curious. But I hope you enjoy the knives, I hope you enjoyed the build. I've got a lot more work to do to get ready for this market because I move in tomorrow. Thanks for watching.